Okay, we're learning now the Maamar Vata Tetzaveh. So we're on Eis Dalid. The Rebbe was explaining before the pasuk Vata Tetzaveh Bnei Yisrael v'yilchei lecha Shem and Zayis. So the Rebbe asked a number of questions. First of all over Torah it says Daber o Bnei Yisrael. Here it says V'ata. It's not stam a difference because Vata means you command. L'cher Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't command, Hashem commands. And then also we need to understand why did they bring the oil to Moshe Rabbeinu if Aaron kindled the menorah? And also, what does it mean, Kosis Lamor? Why does it use the word Mor? It should say Or. And also, the last question was, at the end, one pasuk says Erev ad Boker, from night to morning, another pasuk says Tamid constantly. Which one is it? So he starts explaining that Moshe Rabbeinu is what binds the Yidden to Hashem. And when Moshe Rabbeinu binds the Yidden to Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu is the head, the Yidden are the feet. So just like in the physical body, the head, if he needs to go somewhere, must rely on the feet to take him there. So the same thing, the feet, meaning the Bnei Yisrael, elevate Moshe Rabbeinu. So when Moshe Rabbeinu binds the Yidden to Hashem, so then the Yikhu Elecha, they make Moshe Rabbeinu even greater. And that's what he says, Sham and Zayizoch, through this that the Jews are on a level of Kosis, that makes, it even comes out the level of Mod. That's the first two aces. Then now, the Rebbe is explaining that Moshe Rabbeinu is called Raya Behemda. Either the faithful shepherd or the shepherd of faith. And he explains that every Jew has a munah, it could be in a way of makif, but what Moshe Rabbeinu does is internalizes the level of a munah, and through the level of kosis, that's how Moshe Rabbeinu did it. And not only Moshe Rabbeinu, the Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation, like we find Mordechai was a Moshe Rabbeinu in his generation with Mesiras Nefesh, so he's able to reveal that aspect of more that every single Jew needs. So he says in Daled, V'hinei abir b'pasuk Vata Tetzaveh. This explanation that the Friedrich Rebbe writes in the Maamar Vata Tetzaveh, Bo behem shechnam avur b'tchilas ha-Maamar. Because the Maamar of the previous Rebbe didn't begin Vata Tetzaveh. He began the Maamar v'kibul ha-Yehudim es asher chelu lases. That the Yidden began, accepted finally at Matan Torah what they began, at Purim, what they began at Matan Torah. So he says, this comes in the Friedrich Rebbe's Maamar, this comes in continuation to the concept of v'kibul ha-Yehudim. So he says, what does it say over there? The Kibul Mashechel Bizman Matan Torah. Like the Gemara says that the Yidden began, finally accepted what they began in Matan Torah. He says, the Pirish Kibul Yehudim Asher Chelu Lasish Kibul Mashechel Bizman Matan Torah. The Matan Torah at Matan Torah only was Haschola, the beginning of acceptance, like the pasuk says, Eitz Asher Chelu Lasish. What they began accepting in Matan Torah. In the time of Gzeiras Haman was the final acceptance. V'kibul ha-Yehudim aderech Maamar Azal. Kimu mashi kiblu kvar. It says Kimu v'kiblu ha-Yehudim. So what do you mean Kimu v'kiblu? The expression is funny. First you're kiblu and then Kimu. You can't do Kimu. You can't fulfill something before you accept it. First you accept it, and then you... So what's it explain Kimu? So the Gemara says, what it means, Kimu mashi kiblu kvar. It means not that they're willingly accepting what they began already, what they accepted in Matan Torah, they began mamash doing it. What the Friedrich Rebbe is explaining in the Maamar there. When the Jews said Nasiv and Ishma by Matan Torah, the Gemara said that was only the beginning. Okay, that's what he explains. So he says, Medayik b'Maamar. The Friedrich Rebbe is in Medayik and the Maamar, Shalcher Udvar Pella. This is a wondrous concept. And the Rebbe explains in Ha'ara 24 that look at the diuk nifla, there's nisim in the flois. Nes is supernatural, but plois is even wondrous in the realm of miracles. So Pella is a much greater level of wonder than Nisim. So he says, L'chayr is a Devar Pella, the Matan Torah Yisrael B'tachlis so Ili. L'chayr, by Matan Torah, the Yidden were on the highest of levels. Ba'aya Eslam Gilu Elokus B'darga Chinailis. And they had the unbelievable revelation of godliness. The greatest revelation of godliness that ever happened until Mashiach was Matan Torah. Greater than the Bati Mikdoshes, greater than everything. And he says, the Neis of Shegam Kedem Matan Torah. In addition to the fact, before Matan Torah, he also had unbelievable miracles. Dad, you see us Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yam Suf, like we learned that the levels of Yam, all the hidden levels of Elokus that are too great to be revealed became revealed. So by Matan Torah was even a greater Gilui than Kriyas Yam Suf, Yitzias Mitzrayim. So the question is like this. By Matan Torah, the Yidden were on a super high level. Yet in the days of Achashverosh, the Yidden were down in the pits. The Neis of La'alam V'as the Shebachol Golus. In addition to the concealment of every Golus. Like he says, the Chol Golus is similar to Golus Mitzrayim, because that was the initial Golus. Or K'mei Shebegolus Mitzrayim, it says, V'leisham ala Meisha Mikaitza Ruach Me'avei Dekasha. They didn't listen to Moshe Rabbeinu. I mean, there was such a concealment, they didn't. And not only that, Golus. In every Golus, the definition of Golus means Sheyeshnim Kamen Nisyenis B'kim HaTorah HaMitzvahs. Because what is Golus? A lack of revelation of godliness. Golus is like the pregnancy state where the head of the kid is the foot and the head, it's all in a big mess. You don't know what's top, you don't know what's bottom. The goyim are on top, the Yidden are at the bottom. It's a tremendous hell and v'hester. And he oz bisman gave, that's every golus. Not only that, bisman gzeiras homan. Hoya hell and v'hester, a yesed is even a greater helam than a regular golus. Why? Well, the explanation is very simple. That was the only time there was a gzeira against every single Jew throughout the world. The only time there was a gzeira against every single, because he ruled the world, 127 countries. The only time there was a gzeira of lahashim and la'arug la'abit, and the goyim had the ability to do it, was b'shas haman. So not only is it a regular goal, it's the lowest of the low. Yeah? And l'chayres, he says, afo became, bisman matan Torah, when the Yidden were tachlis so ilui, when the Yidden were on the ultimate high, it was only haschola hechelu lasis. And yet, bisman gzeira saman, kshahu betachlis shiflus, hoye dafka, oz dafka kibul masher chelu b'matan Torah. In other words, the culmination of Matan Torah is Purim. Kibla yidum es asher chelu lasis. Which, by the way, the connection between the luchos, the shenis broke. The luchos achreinis were given on Purim. Darizah writes that Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippurim who? Darizah writes that Yom Kippur, which is the 5 tefillas, Yechidah Shebenefesh, all that stuff revealed, is only Kippurim. It's only like what Arizal explains, that Purim is even greater than Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippurim is Kippurim. Okay? So that's the connection between Purim, by the way, and Yom Kippurim. There's a bunch of connections. First of all, Yom Kippurim, they also had lotteries. Which goat went La Hashem, which goat went La Azazel. Those lotteries. Yeah? So that's, Purim was also, he put Purim Hol it's called Purim because he cast lottery.
Purim means lottery.
He put Purim Hol HaGoydol. It says in the Megillah, I don't need the Khomeini. He put Purim Hol HaGoydol. He put Purim Hol HaGoydol, the Megillah says, he put Purim, which is Hol HaGoydol, that's the lottery. Not only that, we find that Purim, there's no mention of Hashem in the Megillah. And simply the pshat is, because they didn't want to be Hashem's name, they'll make an idol out of it, and it would be their idols, and it wouldn't be good. Yeah? But Chassidus explains, why is there no mention of Hashem in the Megillah? Because it's higher than Yud Kei Vav Kei. The miracle of Purim is higher than Yud Kei Vav Kei. Because Yud Kei Vav Kei means a miracle above nature. Purim was a miracle in nature. That means it came from a level above both, above nature, above supernatural, higher than Yud Kei Vav Kei. Right? What happens on Purim? Lifnei Havaya Titoru, higher than Yud Kei Vav Kei. Right? So there's a lot of connection between the day of Purim and Yom Kippurim. And the reason why Kippurim is even greater. So by the way, another open connection is Yom Kippurim, we got the second Luchis. And one was Vikimu Vashekiblu Kvar and Purim. So Purim and Yom Kippurim are very similar. Yeah? So yet, the pshat is, Purim, when they're at ultimate low, so all these connections, by the way, between Purim and Matan Torah and all that. Anyway, in my vibe is so the Friedrich Rebbe writes, again, when he explains the Kibla Yehudim, before the Friedrich Rebbe gets into Va'at Tetzaveh, in the Friedrich Rebbe's Maamar, first he asks this question about the Kibla Yehudim. How is it possible that the Yidden, when they're ultimate low in Purim, accept the Torah when not in the time when they're in the super high? And then later he goes into Va'at Tetzaveh. So he says, in the vibe is that the Friedrich Rebbe explains why Taka was it that Purim was even greater than Matan Torah, so to speak. He says, because the time of Gzeira, Hoyakim HaTorah Mitzvah Shalahem B'Mesiras Nefesh. It was the level of Mesiras Nefesh. By Matan Torah, there was no Mesiras Nefesh. They accepted Torah. They saw what?
So did we start celebrating Yom Kippur after Purim?
No.
Before?
No, Yom Kippur is biblical. Purim is rabbinic. But yeah, we're not talking about the geographic or the time frame of it. We're talking the Inyan of Purim is even higher than Yom Kippurim. So he says the answer is because the Gzeira was Purim was a Kim Ater B'Mitziras Nefesh. The Yosef was what Mesiras Nefesh? We're talking ultimate Mesiras Nefesh. He says the Yosef was Mesiras Nefesh Le'lich B'Chas V'Sholim, not to deny the existence of Hashem, like the Rebbe explains in Torah Or.
Second tablets were given in month of Adar?
No, I'm saying Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippur. I'm saying, but Purim, it's similar to Luchas Shnias. They re-accepted again everything. So he says, not only did the Mesiras Nefesh was not to deny the truth, like the Rebbe writes in Torah Or, Shvehim or Yumamirim Dasam, if the Yidden would give up their Yiddishkeit in the time of Purim, Haman wouldn't have done anything to them. Why? Ki Gzeira Yisrakala Yehudim. The Gzeira was on a Yehudi. What is a Yehudi? The Gemara says, Kaifer ba'aveidah zara u'meida b'chala Torah kula. So if they didn't deny Aveidah Zara, nothing would have happened to them. Afal PK, nevertheless, the Gemara says for the whole year, the Medrash says, the whole year, not even a foreign thought entered the mind to give up. He says, nevertheless, more than that, okay? Not only that, and the Rebbe writes in the order at the bottom, it's, the Rebbe in Tanya says, a kal shebekalim, it doesn't keep mitzvahs, yeah? When it comes, push comes to shove, they'll tell the guy, bow down to an idol, so I'll kill you. The Rebbe says in Tanya, he's willing to give up his life. Yeah? But Torah mitzvahs he's still not going to do. He's a kal shebekalim. The Rebbe writes here, when the Rebbe writes, there was a greater Mesiras Nefesh, Gam al Kiyam HaTorah Mitzvahs. And in 28, the Rebbe writes, Shezeu Chidish Godel, which is a greater, because Amunah, even Kal Shebekalim, who don't observe, are willing to do it. So this is an unbelievable Mesiras Nefesh. To the extent that Mordechai gathered Jews together and they learned Torah with Mesiras Nefesh, which is even a greater Chiddush. They did it publicly. Okay, so therefore he explains like this. By the way, there's a very big Chiddush of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe says that because the world learns, what's the difference between Chanukah and Purim? Purim, there was a Gzeir on the body. Chanukah, there was a Gzeir on the Nefesh. If the Hellenists, if they gave up Yiddishkeit, they were held in a high extreme. The Hellenists, the Mesyavnim, as they were called. And the world says Purim was a Gzeir on the Haman didn't care. You were from, not from Jewish. You were Jewish, he wanted to kill you. The Alter Rebbe says not like that. That even in Purim, the Gzeir was on the fact that there were Yehudim. It wasn't on Jews. It was like Zionists versus Jews. It was like on the Yehudim, people that denied Avodah Zarah. But anyway, that's what the Alter Rebbe writes. So he says, so what was the uniqueness of Purim over Matan Torah? Mesiras Nefesh. And he says, who awakened that Mesiras Nefesh? This age, it's a Mesiras Nefesh Shalahem, were through Mordechai HaYehudi, Meisha Shebedeire. Okay? So there was Mesiras Nefesh that Mordechai, the Moshe Rabbeinu of his generation, awakened within the Jews. And he says, Zeh Kibal HaYudim Eser Shirechelu Lasis. The B'matan Torah Ha'isirakas Chola was only the beginning of accepting Torah. Ubizman Gzeir Somen was the Kabbalah. Why? Kaidei Shoyo Lahem Oz Mesiras Nefesh B'Poel. Not potential Mesiras Nefesh. Actual Mesiras Nefesh. They were giving up their lives for Yiddishkeit. Out Nis'alu Be'inyin Zeh. And Rebbe writes in the parentheses, in this inyan, in other words, L'Poel, level-wise, Matan Torah was the Jews were on a much higher level than Purim. But in one aspect of Mesiras Nefesh, that opinions and that aspect, the Jews were greater Purim than the time of Matan Torah. L'Madreg and Nailas Yosef, they elevated themselves in that aspect to a higher level. Matan Torah. Therefore, only Purim was the Adavka Heiseh Kabbalah v'Kibbal HaYud. Okay, so in Ois Dalet, which we're not done yet with, but the Rebbe is explaining that this whole concept of Moshe, Tzaveh v'Chibur, which makes Moshe Rabbeinu greater, this comes after the Rebbe explains in the Maamar. The whole in v'Kibbal HaYehudim, the Dvar Pella, that Purim is even greater in this respect than Matan Torah. Why? Because of Mesiras Nefesh. Okay. So he says, L'chayri Yeshleimar, L'chayri we could say, Shapirish Kosis Lamor, the meaning, the explanation of Kosis Lamor, like he explained before. Through Kosis, you come to Ma'or. Right? By being tortured, Mesiras Nefesh, you come to Ma'or. Shaydei Kosis Nishba V'Nitka, Magim Lamor, right, is Biur, L'chayri is an explanation. Als der Shebizman Agzeira B'davka Bol Mesiras Nefesh B'Efen Naila Yosef. Okay? In other words, seemingly it means, okay, through Kosis, Mesiras Nefesh, they came to a higher level of more than they were by Matan Torah. That's what seemingly implies. Ki ha-Mesiras Nefesh Shoyu Mitzad Etzem Hashama Shalamayla Megili. Because again, Ma'or is not Or. Or is Gilui. Ma'or is the source of light. It's not Gilui. The sun's rays shine down here. The Or HaShemesh shines up, not the Shemesh. The Shemesh is the source of the light. Okay? So what is Mar? Mar means not a level of Gilui, the level higher than Gilui, the essence. Shamimenu nimtza'ad. This is the simple meaning Rebbe is explaining. What the Friedrich Rebbe seems to imply is as follows: that through the level of Mesiras Nefesh, not only do you come to Or, you come to the level of Mar, which is higher than Gilui. Mar shemimen vayidei shayu oz b'matzav dekosis, and therefore through this, that by Purim, the Yidden were in a level of kosis, they came this gala etzem and neshama, which is Mar. That's the shot of what the Friedrich Rebbe is saying in the Maamar. What's he running to bring out? He's bringing out through Mesiras Nefesh and Purim, they reached a higher level than Matan Torah. The same thing through Mesiras Nefesh of Kosis, you come to Mar. Right? That's the L'chayru. But the Rebbe writes no. Avol mehem shech v'seder inyonim ba'Maamar. And based on the sequence of the Maamar of the Friedrich Rebbe, Shapirish Kosis Lamor comes after the Inyan of Raya Mehemna. In other words, like this. The Friedrich Rebbe in the Maamar explains why Matan Torah, why Purim is greater than Matan Torah. Okay, Mesiras Nefesh. Then he goes into Raya Mehemna, that Tzaddikin, the Rebbe's feed Emunah, and then he goes into the level of Kosis Lamor. Which means, the Rebbe is writing, that Kosis Lamor comes as a continuation of Raya Mehemna, not the Mesiras Nefesh of Kibbul HaYehudim. In other words, the Rebbe is saying, in the Maamar, Kosis Lamor should have right away followed the Kibbul HaYehudim, the Mesiras Nefesh. But no, after Kibbul HaYehudim, he goes into Raya Mehemna. Right? And then he goes into, so he says, in Mashma over there, Shapirish Kosis Lamor, Bo Lachre Inyan Deraya Mehemna, Mashma implies that the level of Kosis Lamor, that Mar becomes revealed, Shayach Gam Lazeh Shemei Shazon Umefanis Sasamuna Shadei Pepnimius. It's caused by Moshe Rabbeinu internalizing Emunah. In other words, how do you get through Kosis to Mar? Not through Mesiras Nefesh, through Moshe Rabbeinu revealing that level of Mesiras Nefesh in the Jew. In other words, there's a sequence over here. Mesiras Nefesh, Kibbul HaYehudim, caused Purim to be greater than Matan Torah. And then he goes into the next aspect of the Maamar, the level of what a Rebbe does. A Rebbe internalizes Emunah. And then he goes into the level, that's what Kosis Lamor is. Which means Kosis Lamor is in connection and a follow-up to the level of Raya Mehemna.
What kind of Mesiras Nefesh is it? It's not Moshe Rabbeinu influence of India. It's not you, it's Moshe Rabbeinu. What kind of Mesiras Nefesh means I break me. Not somebody, not Moshe Rabbeinu puts it in me that I break me.
I really could tell you the Rebbe is going to discuss this later on in the Maamar, which he does really. But to answer your question, Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't do it for us. He reveals the ability to have it done. We are the ones that do it. Like the Rebbe told that guy from Israel, I prepare the oil and the wick, but the fire, you gotta light. So the Rebbe prepares everything, like we discussed in Baloischa, okay? The hadlaka of the menorah didn't need to have a kohen. Hadlaka k'sheira b'zod, the Gemara says. Regular Yisrael is allowed to light the menorah. But the hatavas haneres, the preparation of the wick and the oil, only a kohen had to do that, which l'chayre doesn't make sense. It should be the opposite. Preparation is secondary. So why can't any yokel like to get the menorah ready in the Kohen? We'll do the mitzvah of lighting. So the Rebbe explains, because what it's teaching us is like this. Every Jew has the responsibility to kindle the menorah of another Jew. Every Jew, you can't come along and say, how can I be makar of another Jew to Yiddishkeit? I'm a nothing in myself, I'm a yokel. I don't know anything, I'm an ignorant guy, how can I like the menorah? I'm not a Kohen. The answer, you don't need to be a Kohen to kindle the menorah. But how to do it, the process of how to do it, that has to be established through a Kohen. Meaning, as the Rebbe explains in the Sikha, every mitamid of Shalarin, Oyev Shalim, Reid of Shalim, Oyev Sabrias, and then he said, Mekarvon la Teira. You bring them to Teira. You don't compromise Teira to them. You don't lower Teira to them. Many people believe, wrongly so, that if I want to be Mekarev a Jew to Yiddishkeit, I can't give him authentic stuff, it's too much. So I'll water it down. Okay, you could drive, you could do this, you could do that. I mean, water it down. It says no. And now the Rebbe explains not only, it's not. Torah says you have the koyach and the ability to bring them to Torah, not Torah to them. Once you compromise Torah, it's not Torah. It's not emes. Compromised truth is not truth. It's false. Yeah? So the preparation for the menorah that had to be done through the kohen, the process, how to do it. As they say, the derech, how to do it. But the actual it's the same thing. Moshe Rabbeinu sets everything up. He internalizes the emunah, and now you got to do something with it. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't do it for Moshe Rabbeinu is a Chabadnik. The Rebbe doesn't do it for you. The Rebbe gets you going. He gets the oil, the wick, and I'll go light the fire. The tzaddik is not going to, and by us, the Rebbe doesn't light the fire, and okay, you do nothing.
He gives us the tools.
The tools and the koyach and the ability to, not only gives us the tools. I can give you a tool to fix something, you still won't know what to do. Now he gives you the ability to do it, but you got to do it.
One knows that they have the ability.
In other words, we spoke last night by the class. Shlach, yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu sending the Meraglim. The mission was not to see if we could do it. Figure out how to do it. That Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't do. He tells you there's a mission, you could do it. You could do it. You have the koyach to do it. You could accomplish it. How to do it? That you got to figure out yourself. You're a shliach, not an eved. You have to figure out how to do it. There's a very prominent Nachman Sudak in England. When he went out on shtichs, he asked the Rebbe, like, what do I do? The Rebbe said to him, I think they're paraphrasing the words. This is what I heard. The Rebbe said to him, I gave you a mission, I gave you a place. How? Figure it out. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. So the Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu gives the koyach, but you got to do it.
Sure.
Well,